Good morning and welcome to another edition of The Analyst Speaks, a WebTV special program powered by Proshare, Nigerians' leading financial information hub. Today, the conversation will be around inflation, which is one of the socio-economic factors that determines if a nation is doing well. Inflation is the rise in price level of an economy, which leads to a drop in purchasing power of the currency of a country. For example, whatever you buy currently for 100 naira, you may not be able to buy at the same price rate over a period of time. Nigeria is currently witnessing a rising tide in inflation, which is about 18.12%, while food inflation is at 22.72%. To discuss the rising tide in inflation and how it affects Nigerians, we have in the studio today Proshare Economist Borokini Adesola. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Once again, it's good to be here. Thank you very much.
Right. I hope getting to work this morning wasn't so difficult.
No, it wasn't.
All right. All right, great. So the first question I'd like to ask you would be a bit more personalized. So concerning the current situation of inflation in Nigeria, individually, how has it affected you as a person?
Okay, thank you very much. First, let me give proper context. As you've rightly mentioned, inflation has been rising. Unexpectedly, yesterday, inflation figures were released by the National Bureau of Statistics. And according to the data, it shows that the headline inflation rate declined from 8.17% in March to 8.12%. And that's a slight decline. And also, like you rightly mentioned, food inflation declined from 22.95% in March to 22.72% in April. Although this is a slight decline, I feel for the MPC committee is a temporary sigh of relief. Now, to your question, for me, individually, inflation, the impact of inflation has been devastating. I'm sure most Nigerians share my plight.
Yeah.
The cost of transportation to the same, should I use kilometer, to the same venue? Destination, thank you, has increased, has doubled. Also, when you consider food items that are being consumed, common food items, gari, and also food items that are used in making other foods, right? Just like onions, that's also risen. For me, that consume soft drinks a lot, I've also seen a rise in the price of soft drinks. So basically, what that means is, obviously, there's been an increase in some of the goods I consume. And once you experience an increase in cost of goods without a commensurate increase in your revenue or your income, what that means basically is that there's a decline in your disposable income. So it's safe to say that for me personally, I've seen a decline in my disposable income. And aside that also, in terms of my standard of living, I would say there's also been a decline in my standard of living. That also reflects an increase in the cost of living. So like I said, I feel most Nigerians share my plight. Middle income earners, low income earners, they share the same plight. So in a nutshell, the impact of inflation has been devastating. And not just for me, for most Nigerians, I'm sure they share a similar plight.
Yeah, I'm sure that's for all Nigerians, because even personally, you know, the same budget you used to have for a month, you have to, you have to up in your budget, and you have to reduce your savings basically, because that's how it has affected me personally. Well, you know, considering inflation in Nigeria at present, we have an unemployment rate of about 33.3%, which is a lot for a country who is experiencing a rise and, you know, a fluctuation with inflation. So as an economist, what do you think that the government can do to reduce the pressure of price increase for its citizens? I mean, taking the fact that things that we used to buy, like for instance, spaghetti in 2017 or 2018 was about 120 to 250 naira, and currently it is about 250 to 300 naira. So what can the government do to reduce this increase in price for its citizens in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much. I feel the question is needed at this particular time.
Yeah.
For me, this is a catch-22 situation. And this is so because, number one, I would advise that the government embarks on any form of conditional cash transfer.
Yeah.
Neither will I advise for the government to still continue its subsidization of either energy consumption or electricity. And I feel over time, I understand people's plight. And the reason why I would advise for any conditional cash transfer is, for me, I feel it can further fuel inflation and add to the burden of Nigerians. And it's quite dicey also, given the fact that the government has a lean purse. Our FAC revenue has been constrained and has been susceptible to oil price volatility. So I feel the best thing first is, I feel at the heart or the core of the issue is insecurity that has greatly affected food price.
Yeah.
We are all aware that the northern region, for me, is the food basket of the nation. And over time, almost every day, I'm sure when you tune into the news, you either hear of a case of banditry,
Yeah.
or the case of kidnapping. Or probably Boko Haram capturing a new territory. So I feel at the heart of the issue, first, I feel the government should, as much as possible, aggressively pour resources into addressing the food inflation. And I feel when that is done, once insecurity is resolved, I feel farmers will be confident to go back to their farms. And once that is done, basically, once farmers are confident, they cultivate, they plant enough food items, I feel in the short to medium term, that will reduce the burden on citizens. Like I said, I don't feel there's a silver bullet solution.
Okay.
Neither do I feel there's a magic wand that can just change or ease in the burden. So I feel it's a step-by-step process. The government can give the right body signal, ensure that it communicates its willingness to, as much as possible, ease the burden. One way in which you can do that is blocking leakages, because at this moment you won't advise for the government to either reduce tax. So as much as possible, block all forms of leakage, reduce the cost of governance, pour as much as possible resources in protecting the lives of farmers, and ensuring that Nigeria's image as regards its security concerns is being changed. I feel once that is done, I feel it will have a great impact in reducing the burdens on Nigerians.
Oh, great. Okay, so this brings me to another question. What is the major cause of a rise in inflation in a country? As if we want to relate it to Nigeria, what is the major cause? Does it have to do with imported inflation, or I mean, what are the things that foster inflation in Nigeria?
Okay, there are many factors that can drive inflation rates, and some analysts have said, oh, the rise in food inflation is a major contributor to the rise in headline inflation. But like you have also rightly mentioned, Nigeria's import dependency has also put it in a precarious situation. Let me read out some statistics for you from the NBS data. For 2020, Nigeria imported goods worth over 19.8 trillion naira.
Okay.
And totally exported goods worth about 12.5 trillion, and we had a trade deficit of 7.3 trillion. That obviously means Nigeria is a net importer. And when we talk about trade deficit, it means that your import exceeds your exports. Also, let me give you statistics as regards manufactured goods. For Q4 2020, Nigeria imported manufactured goods worth 3.83 trillion naira, and we only exported goods worth 128 billion naira. That means Nigeria was also a net importer of manufactured goods. So for me, what this basically means is it makes your economy susceptible to probably a rise in food items or a rise in manufactured goods in those countries that you import from. Okay. For example, according to the statistics for Q4 2020, it shows that Nigeria's major import destination was from countries like, I think the country that came first was China, I think of about 28.28%, followed by India. I think India was about 8%, then US 7.7%. For example, we are aware that US inflation rose to 4.2% for April. So what this basically means is if there's a continuous rise in the inflation in these countries, and Nigeria is heavily dependent on these nations, over time, the pass-through effects in terms of rise in cost, because we are import dependent, we affect us locally here. Because most times, since our demand for some of these commodities might be inelastic, you find out that it's easy for some of these importers to pass some of this burden to we, the final consumers. And to further fuel it, you are also aware of the port challenges.
Yeah.
So you're aware of the exchange rates present in the situation.
Yeah.
You're also aware of the port challenges, and also the probability or the possibility of a flow in terms of rising costs because because of the rising costs in those countries we import from. So if you accumulate all these factors together, it just adds to the burden in terms of rising costs on we Nigerians. So I feel, for me, the best thing as much as possible, like I said, most of these situations, there are no silver bullet solutions. But what can be done basically is for the government to have a plan on how to change that narrative or trajectory on Nigeria becoming, still being an import-dependent nation.
Okay. All right. So we're just talking about, imported inflation. So my question to that regard would be, what are the practical steps that could be taken to reduce importation dependency and imported inflation in Nigeria?
Okay. It's I would say it's so easy. Okay. But I think proper planning. Okay, for me, for example, now, there are conditions that make businesses thrive, that make manufacturing thrive. And most of these conditions are not present in Nigeria. For example, if I am an investor and I want to invest, I'm interested in investing in a climate that is well secured. I'm interested in investing in a climate where the exchange rate is a bit stable, where regulations are stable, where there's presence of both hard and soft infrastructures. But you find out that most of these factors are absent in the Nigerian economy. Yes. So most times, no business can thrive in these forms of uncertainty. So also, I would like to also highlight some of other challenges. And one that stands out also is human challenge, which has been emphasized, which has most times been neglected by the government. Because no matter how creative you are, no matter how innovative, or no matter how good a policy is, there must be willingness and commitment from both the policymakers and those that are going to implement such policies. So for me, as much as possible, to change that trajectory from Nigeria becoming an import-dependent nation and also being susceptible to imported inflation, I would think one of the greatest steps the government can do is to, as much as possible, attract foreign direct investment. And you can only attract foreign direct investment once those investors are guaranteed that once they can bring in their income, their money or their investment, they can repatriate that funds at a reasonable exchange rate. Also, you have to guarantee security. Like I said, security is the heart of all issues presently.
Yes, it is.
No investor will want to come to the Nigeria climate knowing that it can be kidnapped.
Yes.
They'll prefer to go to other competitive economies like Ghana, Egypt, or Kenya. And aside that, another factor too that stands out which the government can do is transparency and accountability. Multilateral agencies are only willing to give out loans once they know that those loans will be used for the purpose for which they were collected. And over time, you find out that the Nigerian economy has not been able to account for some of these funds which it has borrowed from these multilateral agencies. So I feel if these problems that I've highlighted can be worked upon duly, I feel at least in the short to medium term, it will ease the burden of inflation or change the trajectory or narrative of Nigeria's rising inflation.
Okay. All right. That's a good one. I do hope that the government tries to implement all of these different strategies that could help Nigeria become a better place, especially with regards to inflation. So basically, there's been a lot of debates regarding Nigeria's high cost of doing a business and structural deficiencies in Nigeria. So basically, what do you think that the argument regards the government removal of subsidy and the reflective tariffs would be, and what would be the best decision given the already high levels of inflation in Nigeria?
Okay, over time, it's quite understandable when there'll be agitations by Nigerian citizens about the government removing subsidy.
Yeah.
And it's quite also understandable why Nigerian citizens be agitated on the government implementing a cost-reflective tariff. And over time, I will attribute this basically to distrust. And because of that, I won't say the government should not remove subsidy, because the question most analysts have asked is, if the government does not remove it now, when will be the best time to remove it? And it should also be noted that these subsidy programs have, over time, led to subsidizing inefficiencies, both in the power sector and also as regards fuel consumption. And you also find out that there are some particular individuals that are gaming the system. So in that context, it will be best for the government to leave such decisions as regards the prices of power and the prices of PMS to be determined by the market to encourage more investment. So I feel what can be done basically is proper communication by the government and over time accountability and transparency, because the average Nigerian is like, oh, that this is the only free lunch I'm eating from the government, and the government wants to take this away from me. I'm not seeing any benefit of the government. The only benefit I can see is a reduced fuel price and the fact that I'm not paying as much as I should for the power I'm consuming. So because of that high level of distrust, the citizens are not sure that, or are not confident that once those money are being once the money being paid for this subsidy are halted, they're not confident that this money will be used or judiciously for other priority sectors.
Yes.
So I feel, whether we like it or not, I feel subsidy should go. Most developed and emerging economies do not subsidize inefficiency.
Yeah.
Instead, these funds can be used, like I said, for other priority sectors that require a whole lot of capital expenditure, because I feel that can drive the narrative as regards Nigeria's economic growth.
Yeah, you're correct. So we know that food inflation is a major problem in the country, just as we were talking about earlier. This is what affects the everyday Nigerian youth and even beyond that. So as an economist, what do you think could be the possible steps to be embarked on to improve agricultural productivity in Nigeria?
Okay. There have been various initiatives and various programs that's been embarked by both the government, some in isolation and some in collaboration with the private sector. But as most analysts and I have noted, that it is very germane that the government address the root cause of low productivity in Nigeria in terms of agriculture.
Yeah.
And one of the root causes is the high levels of insecurity.
Yeah.
I think about last year, we heard about in the Northeast, a particular state, where about 43 rice farmers were being slaughtered.
Yeah.
So once those news have been heard by other farmers, they are discouraged to go to their farms. We also heard about Benue State, where their farmer headers crisis, and over time, you hear the farmers complain about their farmlands being encroached upon.
Insecurity.
Yes. So basically, one thing that can be done is, first, regardless of the innovation or creative steps, the first thing that should be done is addressing insecurity aggressively. The term aggressively is very important. And then, after you've done that, then, as much as possible, investors will be interested in that sector.
Of course.
It will change the narrative that you can't go to the north to farm. It will change the narrative that you can't go there and watch your farmlands and be scared.
Yeah.
Then after that, I feel it's very also vital to infuse technology. It should be noted that, like most people have noted, Nigeria has large arable lands.
Definitely.
And compared to other nations like Netherlands, Nigeria has a lot of competitive advantage.
The weather, climate.
Yes, you're right. So I feel we can take advantage of that. And we can learn practical lessons from both Netherlands and Singapore. As of 2018, Netherlands was the second exporter of food in the world. And like I've mentioned earlier on, they don't have as much land as we have in Nigeria. Yeah. But what have they done? First, for Nigeria's case, addressing security. After that, technology, like the case of Netherlands and Singapore. So what did Netherlands do? What Netherlands did basically was to invest aggressively in agriculture and research. So they have a university that is solely concentrated on research. Aside that, as much as possible, technology, greenhouse farming.
Greenhouse farming, yeah.
And you've also find out that they're able to produce an antibiotic rather than just using an antibiotic. They're able to produce a system whereby animals and plants do not necessarily need to be infested. Artificially, they had resistance, and that made productivity better. And aside that, also you also discover that their farms, they could also monitor farm activities using drones. Yes, exactly. So you find out that although this to scale up your agricultural productivity using technology requires a lot of funds.
Yes,
that's why it is emphasized that to get to that level first, as much as possible, change the narrative as regards Nigeria's security concerns. Then, as much as possible, you can pitch to investors to see reasons why they should invest heavily in Nigeria's economy. Nigeria's agriculture, rather. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so the Central Bank of Nigeria would be holding a meeting. Monetary policy will be holding a meeting, and many have argued that the given rise in inflation and the perceived K-shaped recovery, they've argued about these things. Now, the question is, what do you think will be the MPC's decision as regard the MPC rate, and what are the likely implications?
Okay. Before the inflation figures came out, like I said, most economists had forecasted or projected that the Nigeria's inflation rate was going to rise. And the reasons for their projection basically was because some of the contributing factors to the rise in inflation were still present, such as the insecurity concerns, structural rigidities, the absence of basic infrastructure, and the likes. But with the inflation rate reducing slightly, for me, I feel this is a temporary sigh of relief for the Monetary Policy Committee. I would have projected that if the inflation rate had risen, the Monetary Policy Committee would have been forced to increase the MPR rate, that's the monetary policy rate, and this is so to curb a further rise in inflation. And since it's reduced slightly, I feel that the Monetary Policy Committee will maintain a status quo. That means they will maintain all rates as they are presently. And I feel that will further engenders the CBN's stance as regards emphasizing on growth rather than reducing inflation.
Okay.
And I feel, like you rightly mentioned, what will drive their stance, or what is driving their stance presently, is the fact that although it's perceived that Nigeria has recovered from its recession, like you rightly mentioned, that growth has been perceived by many people and many corners as a K-shaped recovery. And a K-shaped recovery for me is an unequal type of recovery, where some sectors have seen growth, while some other sectors have seen a decline. For example, your first question was regards how the inflation has impacted negatively. Though the Nigerian economy has recovered, but I'm a middle income earner.
Exactly.
And my income has not necessarily recovered. As regards sectors also, you also discover that there are some sectors that have recovered, and while some sectors are still struggling. For me, I feel most SMEs are still struggling, so they are below that curve. While you find out that most banks recorded increase in profits, the construction sector has recovered, while you also still discover that the manufacturing sector has not seen any market recovery. The hospitality sector, transport sector has not seen any recovery. So I feel the government will, as much as possible, through the Monetary Policy Committee, we try to boost growth, and that's why I feel instead of increasing the interest rates, the monetary policy rate, I feel the monetary policy rate will be maintained at the present level, while the CBN will, as much as possible, try to foster economic growth through its development finance role, probably financing some particular sectors through some peculiar funds.
Okay, so earlier you mentioned that, there has been a drop in the percentage of inflation, but it has not reflected in your life individually. So my question is this: why is it that when there is a drop in the percentage of inflation, why do we not, like, why is it not circulated? Why is it that the common man is like, our cost of living doesn't change, it doesn't necessarily affect us directly immediately? So what are the reasons why it is not circulated immediately? This percentage has reduced or dropped?
Okay. The inflation figures that were rolled out by the National Bureau of Statistics yesterday is supposed to reflect not present realities, but past, the past month's happenings. And for present realities, for the present realities of the month of what month are we? For the month of May. The figures for June that will be released will reflect consumers' realities as regards price increase in June. That is so because the inflation data is a lagging data that is being released. So you don't necessarily, in terms of impact, you cannot just gauge the impact.
Okay.
So when you interpret the inflation figures like the one that was rolled out yesterday, it meant that averagely for the month of April, the average Nigerian consumer witnessed a rise in headline inflation.
Okay.
Also, for the month of April, the average Nigerian consumer recorded or experienced a rise in food prices. So that's how inflation figures are properly interpreted.
Okay. All right then. Thank you very much for answering that question. So, what is your outlook for inflation, given the persistence of insecurity in Nigeria and the structural rigidities? How can Nigeria navigate the rising tide in inflation?
Okay, like mentioned, the rise in the slight or marginal decline in both headline inflation and food inflation was unexpected. And for my outlook, I feel in months to come, I feel the inflation figures will still experience a rise.
Okay.
But in terms of the magnitude of the rise, I feel it will increase at a decreasing rate. Food inflation, I've not seen any real policy that's been spelled out by the government to duly address the security concerns. So I feel in the near short to medium term, I still feel both food and headline inflation will record an increasing, will rise, but the magnitude will increase at a decreasing rate.
Okay.
Also, as regards policies that can be done to change this trajectory, at the heart of Nigeria's inflation problems is still insecurity.
Okay.
That's at the heart. And aside from insecurity, there are other symptoms that have showed, or there are other symptoms that have arisen as a result of the insecurity. So first, address insecurity challenges. Then, as much as possible, funds need to be directed at upping our infrastructural facilities. Also, as much as possible, the issue of ports has been long due.
Yeah.
As much as possible, I feel it's high time we aggressively address the issue of our ports. Over time, you've seen various policies like the Economist system, but these policies have been frustrated by human challenge, such as corruption and the likes. So it is very vital also that as much as possible, we address our port challenges. Also, if you really want to bring in more foreign investment and you want to change the tides as regards Nigerian manufacturing sector, it is vital and pivotal that the exchange rate be unified. Investors are seeking competitive environment. Investors are seeking to maximize their returns on their investment.
Yeah.
I won't come to an economy that I'm not guaranteed
returns on my investment.
Yes. Neither will I come to an economy that is insecure. So for me, it is very pivotal that we, as much as possible, attract foreign direct investment. And you can only do that by reforms, accountability, good regulations, political will, which is very vital, transparency. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for taking all those questions. And we do hope that If you're out there, you have learned a thing or two about inflation and the future predictions for what it might be for Nigeria. And also, if you'd like to find out more about finance or improving your personal finance, you could visit our website at www.proshareng.com. Thanks for watching.